Welcome everybody. Hola community. It's Blender.Today number 73. I'm so excited to be here because this week I thought I wouldn't have many things to show, but bam, suddenly more features started appearing. A whole branch from the Summer of Code project related to the outliner improvements got merged. So there is so many things that I am not gonna spend any more time talking about random stuff except the thread where you can ask your questions, which there's already 45 comments, so it's gonna be tricky to show everything and reply to all your questions. But please go to Blender.Today and you will find the thread here by Momotron. Thank you for making it. And let's get to this. Let's get to it. I'm gonna be using Blender from the Buildbot now, and let's get to it because there is many things that are being improved. One of them is the outliner. There is two major features that I'm going to be talking about, but I think this one deserves the most because they are used all the time, every day you're using the outliner. So improvements like this, it's how it should be. The improvement like this is actually going to make your life better. So first, outliner. Shift select on any of the objects in the outliner and it will select the objects in between. So how's that for a change? How's that for industry standard? So okay, let's actually see it in action. I have this file here from Julian. So yes, the long-awaited feature of just being able to just click shift and then click on another object on the outliner and it will select everything in between. Yes, yay. Then what else? If you hold control, it's going to select the objects that you click on them. So that's another nice addition. And I don't know if you notice here, but something is going on when I am clicking on the objects here in the outliner. Do you see what happens? Yes, the selection is synced. So it's synced between the outliner and the viewport. This is an option, is enabled by default. So now when you click on them, when you shift click on the objects, it will select them at the same time in the viewport. You can disable this from the filters menu and you can disable sync selection, but I think most of the people, everybody will want this feature to be on because it's long awaited. So, okay, let's see more selection features. I feel like I started this show like bam, bam, features. Yes, let's continue this way. So, you know, when you have, when you collapse your collections or when you have multiple objects in one, maybe parented to one object, you have these icons over here and they were added back then. They're there since forever. In 2.80, the official release, it will have a number for when you have multiple objects, but now they become more useful in 281 because you can actually click on them to select these objects. Isn't that great? What is great actually is when you have more than one object of the same type, when it has this this number icon. I'm gonna make the UI a bit bigger so you can actually see it. So when you have this number, it means that there's multiple objects of the same type. Now you can click on them and select, choose one of the objects there and it will highlight it in the viewport. Yes, isn't that nice? So many things that they were missing from the outliner. What else? Box select. You can now click and draw a box and it will select everything inside there. So this is on par with other parts of the Blender, on the new Blender 2.80, where you can box select even in the viewport, which was something that wasn't possible in 2.7. What else? There is a new, I don't know if you noticed too, but now there is a highlight. When you click on the object, you can see the colors. So you can see that the one object here, one of the objects is lighter orange and then the other ones are darker orange. Well, these are related to the same colors that you see in the viewport, and this is a theme setting that will let you know which object is active or not. So another nice addition. But one of my favorites actually is keyboard navigation. You can now go up and down. If you press the arrows on your keyboard, you can go down and it will select the other objects. Or you can also press Shift down and it will add them to the selection. What kind of sorcery is this? What is Blender becoming useful? Is the outliner becoming useful? Yes, it is. What else? You can navigate. This is like a tree. So when you go left, you can expand or collapse by using right. And if you have, for example, many objects inside this object, for example, I'm gonna make this one a child of this, so you have multiple level of objects here. You can do a shift left and it's gonna expand everything inside of that object. So that is also pretty neat. Again, more additions. You know that in Blender you can click, drag down on a column of objects of buttons to perform the same action. For example, you can add a keyframe to all the keys there by click and dragging. This is a fantastic feature that it's in Blender for many years now, and this has been added to the collapse and expand buttons here on the little triangles that you see here in the outliner. So you can click, drag, and close multiple objects at the same time. So, very nice addition. What else? What is left expand? Sorry. Left is collapse, right is expand. It's my English getting a bit confused. And I think it has a little bit of a jet lag still. Anyway, more. Invisible objects. You can, if you have objects that are, for example, hidden, there is a new filter option in the filter popover where you can choose the objects to show only the invisible. Or actually, when I compiled this feature was called invisible. When you try the new version tomorrow from the buildbot, it's gonna say hidden. Because hidden is a word that we use more often in Blender. We don't use invisible. So I proposed this change to the developer, to Nathan, and he agreed, and he already changed it. So this build that I have here is actually too old. It's like half an hour old. So that's too much in Blender time. What else? This other feature that I like in the new outliner improvements is the here, let's make it a bit more spacious. I'm going to save this file. Is that constraints for the objects, for example, or for the bones. So if you have an object constraint for, like, let's see, an armature, you're going to see it here. It's listed with the actual icon, and you can also disable or enable the constraint from the outliner. So that gives a lot more power to the outliner. You don't have to manually select the object and go to the constraints list to do it, to fix it. So that is very nice addition. So we can stop having so much work to do in the properties, but more in the outliner, especially because it goes with the same, it makes sense with the other options, right? Let's continue. The sequencer and vertex groups. So if your mesh also has vertex groups, for example, let's add a vertex groups. Let's see, let's press the dot. By the way, somebody on Twitter, I read that they didn't know that if you press the dot in the outliner, it goes there to the selection. So yeah, Blender is full of these little things. I think the dot to center the selected is everywhere in Blender, even in the curves or in the graph editor, in the dope sheet, or everywhere, I think. So yeah, Blender is very consistent with those things. So try to click those, you know, especially for selections, it's very consistent. So yeah, now you can see the vertex groups from here, and you can click on them to make them active. So there is more of a connection, and there is more work to be done here, but let's continue with this one. Speaking of clicking on icons, when you have multiple cameras, so let's go to the camera here. When you have many cameras, so for example, let's make it in a new file. It's easier. So I have my camera, I have multiple of them, And you can now click on the camera icon, not on the object icon, but the object data icon, the one that is green, to make the camera active. So you can switch more easily between which camera is active from here without actually going to the viewport. That's another very nice addition. Then what else? Set parent for entire collection. So now when you have multiple objects selected and you move them on top of another object and you hold shift, it's gonna put all of the selected objects there as well. So it's also objects within a collection. It should also work that way. So there is, what else? Change active. This is more like a fix. It's when you have, for example, when you have a second collection and you delete or hide this collection, it would happen that the collection will still be active. So you could add objects to a collection that was hidden. So that's in 2.80, but in 2.81, or the work in progress development experimental builds that you can download already, you will see that whenever you hide a collection, the parent collection is going to be made active. So in that case, when you add an object, it's going to be properly added to the parent collection, in this case the scene collection. So yeah, let's see. What else? Is everything okay? Everything okay here in the chat? I see a little bit of spam, but yeah, let's try not to spam so much. Let's share the enjoyment of all these new features. What else? You can press F2 to rename an object. So this was added everywhere in Blender. You can press F2 to rename the object that you have in the viewport. It's like a global setting. It works pretty much everywhere. But in the outliner, if your mouse is over the outliner, you can rename the object that is active here. So it's a bit more consistent, and you can edit them in place. Only works with your mouse over the outliner. And last but not least is the eyedropper. So for example, when you're adding a let's say object constraint, or whenever you can pick with the eyedropper a object, you will now be able to do it from let's say I add a copy location. When you click on the eyedropper, you can now pick objects from the outliner. So it also works there. So many things. I think that's everything I have to cover regarding the outliner, regarding what it's implemented in the outliner. But the developer that made this, Nathan Craddock, by the way, goes by the name Sackman on Fabricator, on developer.blender.org. Fabricator is the name of the software, that's why sometimes I call it that way. But yeah, so these are the things that he added for the Google Summer of Code project, which just ended. It just finished, but now he got apparently super excited from the feedback from the community about adding even more features. For example, properties syncing. So you can click on a material, then it will show the material, for example. It could also be the same for maybe, I don't know, modifiers or sorting in the outliner. That's also very important to add, because right now on Blender, you can only sort automatically or not. And when you say don't sort automatically, it will be sorted by the creation time. So whenever you made the objects, which is a bit silly, and it would be nice if you can sort out things a bit better. So yeah, that's it with the outliner. Phew, I feel like I've been racing for all the changes here. Nathan, you've been amazing. You all started with a tweet some time ago last year. I remember a shout out, or this year, a shout out about a feature that you added, and now seeing you like pushing such a project like the outliner up to the next level, it's amazing. And welcome to the developers community. I think we're gonna have you over for a while, especially now that the development fund is growing. I hope you want to stay with Blender development. Speaking of Blender development, another big thing that dropped like a few days ago is a new denoiser. Yes, this is a new way to denoise your image. So if you are familiar with Cycle's denoiser, Cycle has its own denoiser here in the pass settings. In denoising, it has its own built-in denoiser. I think I can make the UI slightly smaller so I can actually fit all the buttons here. So yeah, Blender has its own, Cycle has its own denoiser. There is also other people making their own special denoisers. Now there is a new one. I think that's the future for denoising. It's not like one denoiser can do everything, but have multiples because they work for different, they work different for different purposes. Animation, static renders. So yeah, the one that was added is the Intel Open Image Denoise. High performance denoising library for ray tracing. Yes, it made its way into Blender. Is actually AI based with deep learning. I think it's the first case of deep learning we have in Blender, where actually it's a library that learns how to that learned over time how to denoise images based on, for example, the color of the pixels or like the scene in general, because it now contains also 3D data, so you can use your normals to make the denoise a bit more accurate. So in the file that I have over here, I made it with the help of Sebastian. I have this render, for example, it's just a monkey. Don't expect the high detail scenes, but I don't know if you noticed, but it was very noisy, the image here. Let's go to the compositor. Let's have the backdrop here, and so this is my image without any denoising. So it's just one big noise here. If I run it through the new node called denoise, you can see that the result will be denoise, but you can see that it's a bit too harsh. If you just use the image, pass it through the denoise, the image socket, and then output, you will see that even though it denoises, it's a bit too extreme because you lose detail, especially on here on the geometry on the sides. So if in order to fix that, you can give it a bit more information to the node. You can, for example, say, okay, as albedo, use the color, the diffuse color of your render, in this case cycles. And as normal, you just give it the normals as image. And here, let's have a look over here, especially or here in the eye, that it's all very fuzzy. If I give it the right info, you can see that the noise here goes away. So you can see the difference. Actually, the difference is huge here. You can see with, yeah, even with the bad compression from YouTube, you can tell. And you can see that here, the details are preserved if you actually give it more information, such as the normals or the diffuse color as albedo. So pretty nice. It's awesome to have new things. Who doesn't like new things? Need more options. Intel Image Denoise is now part of Blender, and it's going to be out in Blender 2.81. You can already try it if you download the Blender.org experimental builds. You're going to see it. You're going to see it here, right here. If it's not available today, it should be available tomorrow. But I think it's already available because it's been there for a few days. And the Linux people may have noticed that the build was a bit behind. It was like around 3 days behind, but now it's been fixed, and now you can try the latest and the greatest here. So props to Intel for making things open source. All right, are you ready for another bomb to drop? There are a few improvements from our friend Pablo Vazquez, Mr. Sculpt. He's been pushing a few of the changes into master, into the main branch. You know that he already has his changes in a branch that you can test on Graphic All. You can see that in graphical there is the sculpt mode features that is also available for all the different platforms. This is all built and maintained by the community, so thank you community for that. And some of the features are now making its way into Blender 2.81, into the upcoming Blender 2.81, which is November, hopefully, but it's there, it can be used. So one of the big features was a voxel remesher based in using OpenVDB. So OpenVDB means fast, voxel remesher means awesome, because it's gonna make like a volume out of your mesh, and it's gonna use that as an input to rebuild your mesh, to remesh your mesh or meshes, and it's gonna be it's gonna make it give you a nice mesh, more a bit nicer than if you use dynamic topology. Dynamic topology is great for adding details in specific areas, but it can also be very slow, because as you paint, Blender has to recalculate the mesh at all times, and that can be slow, unlike the voxel remesher, which you just do once and it should just work. TM. So for example, say when would you use a remesher? Well, if you're sculpting, pretty much I think all the time. So especially when you're sculpting at the beginning, for example, if you want to give two little like Mickey ears to let's say to Suzanne, and you want to join these objects, for example, if you want to start sculpting this, it can be a pain when for example, when you're getting to this area and you need more detail, and if you use for example, let's go to sculpt mode, and if you use dynamic topology, it's not gonna fix that issue, right? If you still have this separation between the meshes, and it's not gonna solve that. So for that, you need to remesh your mesh, your geometry. So in this case, what you can do is, if you're in sculpt mode, it's available in the sidebar. But if you're not sculpting and you just want to remesh your mesh, you can still do it from the mesh properties panel tab. Under the remesh panel, you're gonna see it here. You can specify a voxel size and a few options for smooth normals or the preserve the paint mask. So if you give it 0.1, it's gonna be a bit too big. It's gonna be the voxel, each voxel is gonna be 0.1, so it's gonna be very low resolution. So let's try it just to see it. I ran the remesher, and as you can see, it didn't do anything. Let's see. Is it working here? Because I have it. I didn't compile. Okay, it's not working, so never mind. But let's see in a new file. I tested it right before starting. So let's see. Let's go to here. Let's go to Sculpt. Let's go to Tool. It had the in topo on. I think. Yeah. No. Okay, it's not working. Never mind. You know, this feature is amazing when it works. It's the best thing. It's gonna change your life. And I tested it before, but because I have a new build. Okay. No, I have a buildbot build. There is nothing to worry about. Double click here, execute here. Let's fix things live. This is how you do things under pressure. So tool, remesh, bam, look at this ugly monkey. It's been remeshed. But so never mind. What I use now is a version from the buildbot, from wherever you can get the latest experimental builds. The one that it wasn't working on is my own personal build that I disable things to make things faster. So never mind, it's gonna work for you at home. Don't worry, please do this at home. What I was showing before is the remesh settings that you can enable here from the remesh panel under the mesh tab, or also if you're sculpting, you can have it here on the sidebar, just for convenience, just in case you're working full screen. So the setting by default, as you can see here, is 0.1. So it's not going to be very detailed. If you go lower, you're going to see, for example, 0.3. You're going to see that the voxel detail is a bit, it's a bit better, but you still lose a lot of detail. So you can go even further. However, keep in mind that the more detail that you give it is going to be a bit slower. But it's not incredibly slow per se. But yeah, it's gonna be slower. So in this case, if I want it to be rounded, I can add a, for example, a subsurf, and then I can remesh it again. And now I'm gonna have a bit more of this shape. So if I'm sculpting, I'm gonna have a very nice level of detail here. And no matter, for example, let's make it a Mickey again. Let's add an icosphere on this guy. And let's add another one here. So let's see how it handles intersections. Let's join these three measures and do a Ctrl J to join in case you're not familiar with that tool, and then voxel remesh, and bam, now they're connected. Isn't that great? Now, if you look at the mesh, it's actually fairly clean, and it's great for when you're working with the booleans or when you're doing this kind of weird Mickey shaped objects. And if you're sculpting, it's just amazing because it takes care of all the stitching for you. So it's pretty nice. It's not triangles actually. It's quad as much as possible, and there are a few. No, I think it's quad. It's quad all over the place. Yes, it's math. It should take care of it. But yeah, this is amazing. Having this is just great. You can do all crazy Boolean stuff and just keep remeshing. So the workflow would be, instead of using dynamic topology from now on, you can still use it, but they don't work together. You have to either disable dynamic topology after you do it, and then you have to run the remesh. It's just two different workflows. One is for adding detail in a specific area, and the other one is for adding detail all over your mesh. And I would recommend, if you're going to be using this all the time, just to add it to quick favorites or add a shortcut for it, so that way you can quickly get it working. So for example, if you make something weird, so let's say you break your mesh in a way that it's beyond solvable, especially if you use like the pinch, in a very strong pinch, and you make when you have this mesh with this mess, we all been there, right? Let's be honest. So you can remesh, and it should take care of it. And now it's all quads. It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful mesh you've ever seen. So yes, game changer, like Justin says here. It's a game changer. So awesome. Let's go sculpting now with the rest. With the amazing feature. What else? Because Sculpting got also a few improvements regarding the performance. Now when you're sculpting, I have a video here that was actually made by Pablo, where he shows the difference between sculpting previously in Blender. Basically, when you use the grab brush, it will be very slow. And after, RTX off, RTX on. No kidding, there is no RTX involved. This is just limiting the amount of updates when you're moving the brush. Basically, by just doing that, then the performance is improved immensely. Like, it's not using anything weird. It's just within the code, Blender code. It's just limiting the amount of refreshes that it's doing. So it's super nice because it's an improvement that doesn't require more processing power. Actually, requires less. So very nice. Thank you, Pablo, for looking into that. Another feature was the brush curve presets. So now when you are when you're sculpting, you can use custom follow for your brushes. So it also includes a few built-in ones. It's in the follow drop down, and I don't know if you get to see it there. I think it's being cut, but I can show you here. in real life, IRL. So it's in the tool settings. It's under the fall off popover here, and you can choose the built-in ones, built-in types of fall off, or you can use your own custom one. So you can draw a curve, and this will be the fall off of your brush. So if you're using the grab brush, for example, you can have this very exciting multi-point, because I made it weird. I made it like that. So if you do this, it's gonna be pulling. Ooh, exciting. Oh, this is very interesting. Nice. So you get to the point, but actually this was implemented in order to solve one of the issues with the grab brush, that it had a weird curve, that it would make it wasn't smooth. So when you were pulling things, it wouldn't be nice. It would look like weird. It would look like clumps. You can see here in the video, you can see the difference. So it did these things, like wrinkles on the sides, which maybe you want, but if you use a smooth curve instead, the grab brush will behave a lot more predictable. It will actually grab how it's supposed to. So that's also now built in the inside of Blender. Now let's see your accent, like Indian accent. Oh, cool, thank you. I'm actually Latino, so it's a Latino accent with some Indian influence, I guess. What else? 3D view. Now you can choose when you are using the pen brush. Oops, here. Oh, I copied a bit too little characters. So okay, let's get to it. The navigation mode. Maybe you run into this before, where you are using your pen and you rotate around, and sometimes the sensitivity is a bit too high. So a small movement would be like a huge movement instead. Let's see if I can fit it in the screen here. But basically, this issue was due to the sensitivity of the brush, of the mouse movement, so to speak. So now with this new patch from Pablo Vazquez as well, now whenever you're moving, I don't know if you noticed, but whenever you're actually moving, everything under the viewport, it goes with it. So that is very nice. Let's see. What else? That is pretty much all for the Sculpt and Paint. I still have to talk about Eevee, about UI, sequencer, text editor, and other features. And here's my list, by the way. I don't know if it's a huge. All right, I'm gonna try and get fast to it. Eevee. In Eevee now, if you're doing compositing, you're gonna, or motion tracking, for example, you are gonna be happy about this, because Eevee now supports holdout. So it means that you can have in Eevee, you can have your materials. You can set up your materials to use the holdout, just like you would do it in cycles, and now it works. Basically, it works like a mask. You can mask out. So it's great if you're doing like if you're replacing parts of your footage with 3D or the other way around. So very nice. Addition, Eevee holdout support. Yes. Also, there is an improved in the way transparent BSDF works. So the transparent shader, that node in Blender, Eevee now works a bit closer to what Cycles does. So all the tricks of having the blend mode, add and multiply, they are not needed anymore. They were removed in order to, because now actually, if you just use an add node in the shading nodes in Eevee, it's gonna work the same way, but it's an improvement. It's more compatible with the way Cycles works, and this is all in an attempt to make Eevee and Cycles closer together. So that's the goal, that there's no gap. All right, so next, clamp node to Cycles and a map range node. Yes, these are two new nodes that are added for Eevee and for Cycles. There is a clamp, there is a node clamp, which basically allows you to clamp. So remember, if you have to do it before, you have to use like a multiply node, or like put a floor, or like do some crazy things which are no longer needed because you have a clamp node. And together with the clamp node, there is a new node called map range. If you're familiar with the compositing nodes, it's basically the same concept. You can map from one value to another. So very nice additions. There's also some work going on at the moment with optimizing Eevee for lots of objects with not a lot of geometry. For example, you have a big forest of trees, but the trees are like not low poly, for example. Blender Eevee is gonna work a bit better in that regard. That's not there yet. It's being worked on. It's on a branch, but yeah, expect more optimizations. All right, let's move on. UI, user interface. These are very small little additions here and there. The reports, you know, when you, for example, copy an object and you get these reports down here for errors, for warnings, for information. For example, in this case, if I copy an object, I get, hey, one object copied. If you click on it, now it will show the new, not so new, info editor, the editor that has been around for ages. In 2.4 you had to, like, or in 2.5 you had to move it from the top. No, in 2.4 you had to move it from the top. Now the info editor got a few improvements. You can right click and it has a context menu. It also has a new view menu and a few other options here. You can also box select, and it's getting a little bit of attention. Also, the one that is getting attention is the text editor. So the text editor now contains auto highlighting by default. So if you open a Python file, or if your file has .py at the end, it's gonna enable, it's gonna have syntax highlighting enabled by default. So that is very nice. The shortcut, there is now a shortcut for comments, so you can control / and it's gonna be it's gonna comment the lines where you're in. So that is very, if you're familiar with other text editors for programming, you're gonna be familiar with that one. There is also a lot of work has been gone into reshuffling the buttons here to make it a bit nicer. And there is also a right click menu, which you can also use for toggling the comments or indenting and copy paste and all of that. So yeah, it's getting a bit more standardized. So I'm really happy actually to see that the text editor is getting attention in order to make it a bit more 2.8-ish. In other words, more friendly. What else? I don't know if you noticed, but when I opened Blender before the first time, I had the splash screen, and this is a small detail, but if you resize Blender now, the the splash is always in the middle. I don't know if you noticed that before, but it wasn't the case. It was always like somewhere around. So that may not sound like a big addition, but it is. It's a nice fix that was added by the community. So I wanted to highlight this. Thank you, Luis. He's contributed this, and I believe this is your first patch, I think. So thank you and welcome to the developers family. We hope to see more patches from you. So I'm gonna give it a heart icon. There you go. Awesome. Thank you again. More. The sequencer got a few improvements. The sidebars and the there is a few in their interface, in the sidebar and the sequencer and the preview menus. They got improved. They are sorted a bit better. There is maybe mainly making it a bit more consistent everywhere. There's a new key map, which if you, for example, have multiple multiple strips and you press brackets, yeah, left brackets or right square brackets, it will select everything from on the left side or the right side. And I believe that's a more industry standard way. So also very nice to hear that the sequencer is getting attention. This is mainly a work from the user Tintwatin in the community, and also William Reinisch. So thank you guys for giving some attention to this editor. All right, now time for the, well, I'm running out of time, but there is a lot of fixes and tools and features all over the place that I want to mention. First one, preferences. By default now, the add-on listing in the preferences is gonna show only the add-ons that are enabled. So by default, Blender used to show like a whole list of things that you probably didn't even care about, especially because on the top, there were like the import export. So if you're not really into like importing and exporting, why would you even have them? So now only the enabled add-ons are there and you can see them at a glance. You can disable the ones that you don't use, and Blender should load a bit faster. So it's a nice thing to go and do every now and then. This, what else? There is a refactor on the math nodes, and this is a small one, but let's get it here because I'm excited for the future of this tool, this addition. So this is a small one. The math node now has been refactored. It doesn't look like it, but the inputs here, these inputs are now more dynamically added. So when a kind of math that doesn't need two values, it does not going to show two values. Before it didn't, and maybe it gets a bit confusing, but it's a small thing, but the fact that it got rewritten, it's very exciting for the future. So now it's a bit more, it makes a bit more sense. There are many goodies coming for the nodes, by the way. Not in this release, not in this today, Blender.Today, by the way. However, I've seen a lot of people asking about the UV editor. Why Blender UV editor should have, should be better, should have a bit more features, have more love. Well, it's now getting some love. There is a new feature from the community, from Jesse in the community. Let's give it another shout out to this community developer, Jesse Y. He made this new operator for the UV editor that selects overlapping meshes. So if you have a big UV and you don't know if they're overlapping or not, you can quickly just basically select and use the select overlap, and it will select the meshes that are the islands that have other islands overlapping. So very nice addition, and it's good to see another part of Blender getting a bit more love and attention. So thank you for that. All right, 15 minutes left. More features. You can't complain. Today there is features to like throw around. So for example, let's say you have a material added here that you're actually not even using. You have this material, and let's start a new scene. So I have this material that is red, right? And then I have another material that I made it blue, but actually I'm not even using it. That happens all the time. If you import meshes, if you join meshes, you end up with materials that you don't really use. So there is a new operator here in the dropdown that it will remove the unused slots, the ones that are not really being used. So I think it also works for slots themselves. Yes. So it will remove all of them. It will show you how many is being removed, and that will help to clean up your meshes a bit better. So this can also be used by add-ons, for example. If you do a lot of import, export, weird stuff, you can run this operator to make sure that it will remove the materials that are not being used. What else? Transform. Okay, this is an improvement in the performance. Yes, somebody asked for performance improvement. Well, now proportional editing, when you have a bunch of objects and you move one and it has to calculate the surroundings in order to move these objects with it, or meshes or anything that is proportional editing, got a performance upgrade of 30%, around 30% for 6 million vertices. So the improvement is not linear, so it's not like with 12 million you're gonna get 60%, but it's actually very, very exciting, because it means that around 66 million vertices got 30% improvement. That's very nice. Another improvement regarding that you're not gonna see until, if you're a Windows user and you use the MSI installer, you're not gonna see this improvement until the 2.81 release. But basically from now on, from 2.81 onwards, you will be able to have multiple Windows installs in the same computer. And up until now, Blender will override your installation. And now you can have, thanks to this fix, you're gonna be able to install multiple versions. And what else? Well, since we are talking about installs, the Blender version for Snap is available for 2.80. This is a new thing. So if you're using Linux, you can use you can install Blender from Snap, and it should be up to date. And this is also maintained by us, by Blender, the VF Blender. So it's a nice thing to keep your versions up to date. And that's all. That's pretty much all. Let's go to the questions before I run out of voice. Sorry about that. Sorry, so many features that I didn't get to. I won't be able to answer many. Let's see how many comments do we have here. So it's loading. 59 comments. All right, I'm gonna answer the ones on the top because they have the most points, and they mean that the community has been asking for them. So all right, let's see. Hello, Pablo. Hello. So, hello, Pablo. Can we expect to see global illumination cache for cycles? Eventually, there is a cycles roadmap on the wiki, where you can see the state of some of the features that are being proposed by the community. Remember, there is also the DevTalk forums. DevTalk forums, where you will find cycles. There is a whole section dedicated to cycles, but let's get to the question itself. I feel like addition to cycles will speed up renders a lot. Yes, especially for architecture interior. Yes. Adaptive sampling, is it coming to 2.81? You can read more here. Adaptive subdivision or sampling here. Implementation has not started, but they are considered important. So this is the status of it. But now with 2.8 getting more attention, hopefully we're going to get more developers focused on this as well. And have you heard of Cara Anime Studio? Yes, I've heard. The studio that is making Japanese.engadget here. Engadget published in Japan and published an article where they mentioned that Cara Studio, the ones making Evangelion, is moving to Blender for the last movie, the one that is coming out next year. They are not using a lot of Blender. They say they're using a little bit of it, but the next project should start with Blender entirely. They are now using 3ds Max and they're switching. So, and one of the things that caught their attention is Grease Pencil. That's pretty nice. All right, what else? And then an image and a meme. All right, next. When will the baking be improved in Blender? Right now you can't bake metallic maps, for instance. Also, will baking be accelerated by NVIDIA optics? I have no ideas about those plans. What else? It will also be quite handy to be able to access the bake panel in Eevee. Yes, but the bake is not implemented. It's not just the panel, but it's the whole thing is not implemented yet in Eevee. Yes, actually people are very excited about the Cara thing. Also, there's a lot to be excited because not only they're moving to Blender, but they also became sponsors twice. One of them, it's Studio Cara Corporate Silver, so next to Ubuntu, Google, and the rest. And also as a corporate bronze from the Project Studio Q, which is the actual studio making it. So very exciting that they are supporting. They really, they are, you know, committed because they're supporting and they're switching to Blender. So only great news. Okay, next question. Sophie asks, is it planned to make nodes for physics as in Houdini? Yes, Everything Nodes is a project, it's in development under the functions branch. The first release that might see some of these updates should be around 2.82 because 281 is too soon. For any feature to be part of 2.81, it should be finished before mid-September. So in less than 1 month, whatever is going to make it, it should be finished. It can be just something that you start adding and then you try. It should be finished because that will give the developers around 2 months for fixing and working on performance and making things stable. And then the release can finally happen maybe around November with a stable release, and then start the process for 2.82. And again, a whole month or 6 weeks for adding only finished features. So yes, let's continue. I'm running out of voice at the moment. So many things to talk about this week. When will the asset manager come to Blender? Same as Everything Node. Thank you actually for replying the questions, Harold. Same as the Everything Node, priority is 281. Maybe not because it should be added as soon as possible, but 2.82 is more realistic. Piotr, hi Pablo, what's the plan for addressing the edit mode performance? Well, the edit mode performance is just like everywhere else in Blender has high priority, but there are no plans, as far as I know, besides the continue improving as much as possible. The highest priority at the moment is undo, which is a huge bottleneck, but yeah, the developers are aware of it. Don't worry, they're working on it. It's just not a walk in the park. Yes, Random ask, will there be animation tangents like those used by Pixar in future Blenders? Seems like something like Blender devs can implement. Animation tangents. Not familiar with the tool, but there is new tools coming from the new animation module in Blender in general. You can see in developer.blender.org, you will find on the sidebar all the different modules, and you can see the animation one, which is now led by Sibren, and it looks empty now, but actually the team upstairs, the animators, they are working on animation tools improvements here to be listed there. All right, next question. Xenomax asks, hi Pablo, I think the measure tool shouldn't be an active tool, but more of an object, maybe a new type of empties. This way, when switching tools, it doesn't disappear and could be used in so many ways, including rigging. That's a good point, actually. I never thought of it. Good point, good point. Let's move on. Cobra asks, we now have preferences as floating windows, and soon file browser and asset manager. What does it take to make them always on top of for Windows? Doesn't seem right to provide floating windows without a proper solution. I wish also the internal Blender menus are also detachable and on top. This way you don't have to go through them or pressing keys. Yeah, the floating menus will be a good idea. The problem is when those menus that are context sensitive, for example, I have here. So these menus that show up and disabled, if you have them floating, what happens to them? Like they disappear or they're always there? So yeah, it's a bit tricky. And the floating windows, you mean like the preferences that you can't have them floating all the time? Well, I don't know anybody working for Windows in this for fixing this, but if you use Linux, most of the window managers allow you to have it always on top, so you can continue working, have any window, not only Blender's, always on top. But if you're using Windows, I think this is not enabled, or I don't know if they even implemented it. Next question. Bekego asks, hi Pablo, I want to ask about everything nodes. I asked on the developer portal, but I didn't get an answer yet, so I thought should ask here. What does it mean? Does it mean something like we see in soft image Houdini? So it's also on the data blocks level. Transformer nodes. Everything nodes is this project that hopes that most of the areas in Blender, if not all of them, everything should be nodal. So material level, maybe down to modeling in the future, but that's like way in the future. But for the time being, it's modifiers, particle systems, animation nodes, well, shading we already have, but yeah, that will be the idea. Next, huddle. But I think for once the function branches a bit more advanced, I'm gonna invite the developer Jack to come over to the show and make a special about everything nodes. Next question, Huddle says, hola Pablo, last week I asked you how to unhuddle collections at once. I guess the outliner is the answer. Yes. I was wondering when could we expect the dashboard roadmap page on the Blender website? This chronological record should reflect devs' priorities for me. Yes, I know what you mean. I have it on it's on my to-do list, the dashboard, but we have to define which kind of information should we see, and how much of that should be automatic, because if everything is manual, then somebody will have to take care of it, and I hope I don't have to be, or developers don't have to be, or if it's maybe on the wiki so all the developers can update it, maybe. We have to think exactly. Maybe I can make a thread on Dev Talks to get the feedback from you guys. Bintang asks, thank you for all the hard work you guys putting into Blender. It's getting awesome every day. She's wondering, we have holdout shader for Eevee now. Is there a plan to have collection holdout just like in Cycles? That should be part of the override system. So yes, I think that should be possible using overrides, just like in Cycles basically. Yes. Let's see. Also, do you know that in particle edit mode, the particles won't update when you change its settings? Please report this as a bug if it was working in 2.7. But remember that the particle system is end of life. It means that it's not going to get anything but fixes, no new features, until the new system comes out in 2.82, probably. Hello, I have artifacts in the grid viewport. I tried on Windows, Linux, the same issue. Ideas, paper cut? It's not a paper cut, seems like a bug, so please report it. Next question, Blender nodes are pretty great. Check out this free realistic procedural wood generator. There is a node screenshot. What? So it's a realistic generation, but it's in Gumroad. Gumroad is not free. They ask you for your email if you want it. Even if you put 0, they ask your email. You can't. That's not free. They have your email. So anyway, what is it? It's not screenshot. Can we expect some kind of deep proceduralism with 3D modeling as well as everything nodes comes? Yeah, I think with the preset system, when we have a preset system, hopefully for the asset manager, we could have this kind of setups already, because everything else should take care of it. But even with the current system, it should be possible to do it, to have it. So yes, let's move on. Fudge! It's a 1 minute past 6. I'm already over time, so let's do 5 more questions. All right. Gurlaldeep Singh asks, hi Pablo, can you guys please add shadow catcher in Eevee like we have for Cycles? Thanks for making Blender a great software that anyone can afford. Oh, thank you. I think having the holdout is the first step towards having a shadow catcher. So it's not a high priority at the moment because priority is in performance, in making Eevee working for everyone and to be stable. But yes, it's everybody's asking for it, so I bet developers are aware of it. Mil Porte. Hey Pablo, I'm a new user and I have a main doubt and a bunch of fast questions that came after exploring Blender. Main doubt. What is shown in the picture? Is it a bug or what? Okay, this is gonna take a while. No, that's not a bug. That's exporting. That's okay, that's interesting. This dot tells me that there is a face here, but there is no face here, and you're making it inside. So you can actually, and if you have back face enabled, then you don't see the back face of. Okay, that's tricky. That you can get this behavior by making the things the proper way, but if this happens just out of nowhere by default, then it shouldn't happen. Other questions. I know there is a branch about precision modeling. Yes. Do you know when it will be ready for an official build? No, I'm not aware. I'm not. I don't know exactly when. I know it's being worked on like at the moment, and I can ask the developers. Actually, Germano is a name, and I can ask him about when, but I don't know if it's for 2.81. There's already too many things, but maybe 2.82. There is a thread on DevTalk, by the way, about it, so make sure you check it out if you want to give feedback to the developers. It's here. There was something about here. No, precision modeling. So it's precision. Discussion for here, this one. So make sure you check it out and give feedback to the developers. All right, that was number 4. Yes, no, that was number 5. Number 4, vertex. Hi Pablo, a decade ago Blender UV tools were amazing. Unfortunately, not anymore. So long story short, I think is, what do you think about the UV quest? I love the idea of a UV quest, but I would think that after 10 years we should just get rid of UVs, but no, they're here to stay. So hopefully with UDIM will bring some love back to the UV editor, UV mapping kind of world, and the feature that we got added by Jesse, that was also a nice addition, and I bet there will be more people willing to contribute for something like this. I think the more noise that we make, the more like right-click select proposals and the DevTalk forum, like feedback, the better. Because I know that Jesse, after watching this and after knowing the love that he's getting for adding some UV tools, I love that I think it would be very motivating to add more features like this. All right, what is the problem with UVs? No problem, it's just the pain that it is to work with UVs. And the UV unpack, it could be a bit smarter. The Dragon asks, here. The Dragon asks in the question number 3 is, can Blender get an option so we can see inverted faces like in 2.7? This already we mentioned in the last episode, and I think in the last 2 episodes already, it needs to have an option. There should be a shader option, not shader, maybe just custom color for the overlay. And okay, question number 2: can we get Blender tools similar to this? I mean, we have to watch a video. Okay, it's a short video. Spiral tool. I bet there are multiple add-ons that can make this thing actually. Spirals. Actually, there is an answer in the built-in add-on as mesh extra objects, even custom math functions. Okay, I will leave you the community for that. I'm running out of time, so let's see. Does Blender 2.8 run better on Quadro? What is the advantage we get from these Quadro cards, which we don't get from 2080, 2070? So here, the community's answer. Thank you guys for taking care of this. But yeah, usually they have more VRAM and they are a bit more precise. So if you're working for NASA, maybe it makes sense. But if you're I think it's just better if you just do random like regular use, it's cheaper to have a 2080. So I would maybe have 2 of them instead of having one Quadro. And the last question, I read that Vulkan integration is in development. Yes. Will there be a metal port for macOS in the future? No, there will perhaps. Yeah, exactly. The community's answered everything. Thank you guys. You're making my life easier. This is how it should be, you know. Sometimes I don't get time to answer the questions, but here you get, this is the right answer. We are probably going to use Molten VK because switching Blender to metal, nope. But having a like this wrapper around it, it would make things a bit easier. All right, the Blender smoke simulation, just a bonus question, are far from production ready. Can we expect development? Yes, that is Mantaflow. Thank you guys. I'm gonna give hearts. You get a heart, and you get a heart, and you get a heart. Everybody gets a heart. All right, enough. How are you guys in the chat? Is everything okay? Is everything okay? Yes. All right, everything seems to be under control. I had a great time. I think I've been rushing through all the features. I hope you follow some of them, you can understand them. Otherwise, go to the DevTalk forums. There is the meeting notes where you can read all the changes. I will try to put all these changes, or at least most of them, around in the thread so you can follow them. Try them, test them. They are available. Go blender.org/experimental. Try it. It's the software is breathing, it's changing every day. So for example, the feature for invisible objects in the outliner was added, and now it's called hidden because it's more consistent. So it keeps changing all the time. Let's make it a bit more let's make it a thing to try the software, give feedback, improve it, because it's like having a million developers instead of one. Thanks again for staying until the end. I had a great time. I hope you join me next week at the same time, in the same channel. Before I leave, remember, if you're wearing your headphones, that we go with style. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks everyone. Thanks everybody for hanging out in the chat until so late. I will see you again, same time, same place, next week. Ciao. Now you are breathtaking.